Hi, and welcome back to our channel, Pay Down Debt Solutions. On this channel, we teach a style of banking called velocity banking. We teach it the pay down way. And today I want to go over with you guys all about lines of credit and small lines of credit to be specific. We get a lot of people that talk to us, via the chat or email us and ask us if they can use velocity banking when they only have access to small lines of credit. And the answer is unequivocally, yes, of course you can, which is great, right? So many of you are out there and about half of you, I would say, are out there using nothing but credit cards and small lines of credit to work down your debt. And absolutely 100% you can use velocity banking with these small lines of credit. So many of the plans that Dan and I work, remember, we work with what you currently have right now. We also will sit and look at what you have and what your future potential is, or we will ask you if there's any way that you can get something like a line of credit, right? Either a personal line of credit or a home equity line of credit. Just depends on the situation that you find yourself in, right? And so when we take a look at your finances, the first thing we're going to use is what we have right in front of us. And that's what we're going to work with initially. But we're always going to be looking for ways that we can do even better, right? That we can save you even more. But will these smaller lines of credit work? 100% they will work. Can you do more damage with a larger line of credit and work down your debt faster? Yeah, you can. Without a doubt, you can do that. But it also depends on your situation. So sometimes things work out a little better than others. And the other thing I wanted to address today is, we get people out there all the time that are just, they're naysayers, right? And they might make a comment. And I love that a lot of you will come back and defend velocity banking. It's awesome. But we'll have people out there that are like, why wouldn't you just put your extra income or your extra cash flow on these debts rather than go through all the trouble of doing lines of credit and putting your income in? And you guys, what I can say to that is, yeah, you absolutely could do that. But do most people do that? Do they take their extra cash flow and throw it into their debts? Usually they don't, because they find themselves using it throughout the month. When you put all of your income into a tool and you're running your expenses out of it, you actually kind of have no choice, right? You kind of are already doing it. When you put your income into a line of credit, it is said and done for you. And so there is no extra temptation to take and do something else with that cash. So that is one of the reasons why velocity banking works so well, is because it kind of handles it for you in a lot of ways. And some people just need that extra push. And you know what? If that's you, hey, no worries. Velocity banking can help you. So I'm going to go into lines of credit with you today. I'm going to go into why lines of credit work a little bit better than credit cards. Both will work 100%. Yes, they will. But lines of credit will work a little bit better, and I'm going to show you why. And then I'm going to show you one of our student scenarios that worked, where we worked with nothing but a small line of credit, a $5,000 line of credit to be exact. And then I'm going to show you, now this is not quite done, I'm going to show you what the outcome is of that and how it's taken in a couple different steps. But as you get through it and as you live it, like Dan likes to say, even though it looks intimidating at times, you guys, this really is very, very simple, okay? There's a lot that you kind of, when you're calculating things, that a lot that goes into it, but that's the calculation piece. Once you're living it, there is no math involved, right? You just know what you're putting in, you know what you're running out. Then you take a look at your finances again and you say, okay, I'm at this point with my line of credit. Do I have room to pull over another debt or not? And if the answer is yes, then you're going to pull over that other debt and you're going to continue to work things down. So as complex as it seems to be, it actually is very simple. What we try to do is show you and explain to you why things work the way they do with velocity banking. So let's get into what our topic is today and run those small lines of credit. Okay, so obviously small lines of credit, big or small lines of credit are powerful debt tools. Okay, they're powerful debt tools because of the way that they are calculated. Again, lines of credit such as your personal lines of credit, your home equity lines of credit, your business lines of credit, and your, what did I miss? Your credit cards, right? They're all lines of credit. And when you use them, they're powerful debt tools because they're calculated on an average daily balance. And it is that average daily balance that allows us to regain control over how much interest we are spending and how much we're giving to the banks. When you're running an amortized schedule that all loans, right? All loans are calculated on. An amortization, it gives you a steady payment Absolutely, 100%, it sure does. But it is the calculation inside what's amortized that is what works against you. And that is because it's all front end loaded with interest. Just like I talked about those student loans the other day, where I said that many of the student loans out there, you pay nothing but interest for the first couple of years. And then after that, you start to work down the principal. Okay. And so many of your mortgages work this way, although they don't just do interest only for a complete mortgage, right? So some lines of credit will work that way, which is fine because that actually works in our favor. However, the mortgages themselves are more front end loaded with all that interest, right, in the first few years, because these banks are smart. They know what your buying habits are. They know that you're going to do something different, like move and refinance another loan, or finance another loan, I should say, or you're going to refinance the loan you have because you might have some debt that you want to roll in, or maybe there's a big purchase you want to make. But these banks know your habits, right? They do a lot of research and they do a lot of studying, so they know what people do. And so these mortgages are designed that way, right? So they're designed to give the banks more interest for loaning us out this money, okay? It is what it is, right? It's just a fact. So, all right, anyway. So big or small lines of credit are powerful debt tools, and you can use them alone as the only debt destroyer. Okay, so you could use it as the only debt destroyer, or you can use them in conjunction with other cards. And that is what I do a lot of times, and what Dan obviously does, is we will run them in conjunction with other cards because it just makes more sense to get back as much of that that cash flow, right, that you can. And that's, one of the best ways to do it. All right. So personal lines of credit over credit cards for two reasons. So whether or not you use a credit card or a personal line of credit, right? A lot of times the personal lines of credit are chosen over the credit cards because they have a lower interest rate. Sometimes not, though. It really just, again, depends on your situation. But a lot of times we prefer those lines of credit because the interest is lower, which again gives us more power to run our strategy, okay? So all of your income, the reason personal lines of credit are so powerful is because all of your income can be utilized and go to work for you and work against your debt, right? So your overall line balance drops to lower your interest charges, okay? So think about that. The overall line balance will drop as you put your income in, right? So as that income goes in, your overall line balance drops. And then that alone is what helps to drop your interest charges. Now, lines are not lowered like credit card limits, okay? So that is another thing that's really important to note, is that it's when you have a line of credit, if you have a $5,000 line of credit, it is not likely that bank is going to come in and lower your credit. I actually have not seen that happen. If you guys have, please leave that in the comments, but I have not. So once you are given a line of credit, it is yours to utilize, and you can, max it out every other day if you want and continue to work it down. And that does not seem to have any impact. It doesn't matter how much you put back against it. It seems to be a way that a way that we can run our finances without having to worry about, doing the micro pays such as you do have to do with credit cards. If your balances are high and you've been running at the limit for a long time, you guys should be micro paying. That is really important because I don't want to see you guys have your limits lowered on you, because again, that is what I consider stealing your money. So again, let me go over, I'm going to grab my board. I want to show you the micropay strategy one more time because it's that important. Okay, so here is, as I lose my board. All right, so here is my board, right? And this is for micropaying. So as you can see, and I probably made a whole bunch of noise with my microphone, so I apologize for that. So as you can see, if we have $1,200 in income that we want to put against this card, and it is at a high limit, okay, that means that we're going to divide our payments back to the card, right? Instead of putting a chunk deposit onto that card, we are going to divide it up and we're going to make a payment every other day, okay? Now, do you have to do it every day, every other day? No, you do not. But to be safe and to try this out just to see what's going to happen, I would suggest every other day, okay? So then what you do is you divide it by 15, knowing there's 30 days in the month, right? So 15 days every other day. That's where I'm getting that. Okay, so if we had 1,200 and we divide it by 15, that's 80, right? So we're going to be putting $80 on this card just about every other day, okay? and that will get us to that $1,200. Now, many of you are saying, okay, well, that doesn't make sense though, because I need to charge and make, charge out of this card and my expenses need to come out. Well, that's okay, right? Because you're putting money onto this card every other day. It's probably not likely you're going to be making big purchases or have big bills every single day, right? Or every other day. They're going to happen, more strategically throughout the month. So these will, these deposits then are going to accumulate. But if at the end of the week you had to go get groceries, well, you have money built up for you to do that. Or if you have a bill that's coming out, that's okay too, because you have money built up where you can do that. Now, is it a little bit more labor intensive in the beginning? Sure, it's a little bit more labor intensive, but it's worth it, you guys, to not have your limits cut. Okay, so yeah, it is worth it to not have those limits cut, and I would be doing that. There's a lot of you out there that have commented back and said, hey, I've been trying the micropay strategy and it's actually worked really great for me. And some of you will even notice that your credit score starts to go up. Now, not 100% sure why that's happening, other than the fact that you're revolving that card more often and they're seeing, money come into it. So it's revolving more. So that's why I'm guessing that happens, but I do see it. I do see that when you revolve that line of credit, the credit cards that way, and micropay like that, your scores do come up. So keep that in mind. Another reason why you might want to try or consider micropaying like that. All right, so let's talk about now how personal lines of credit work versus your credit card. Okay, so let's talk about the difference. So let's say the income that we're working with is $2,000. Okay, so if we start here and we look at it as a credit card, okay, so we're going to put our $2,000 into our checking account, right, for about a minute, most of it. So $2,000 is going to go into our checking account, and over here you can see I've got $2,000 going into my checking account on my line of credit. But what's going to happen is this acts more as a pass-through for that entire deposit amount, right? Because the $2,000 goes into the checking account, and then the entire $2,000 then is put against my line of credit, right? It brings my line of credit balance down. So here we put $2,000 into the checking account, but we know that $800 of it can't be used because $800 is for non-chargeable expenses. So that means I have to hold out the non-chargeable expenses into my checking account, and then I have to pay those through my checking account. I can't pay them out of my credit card. So that means the balance of my direct deposit that comes in is going to be $1,200, and that then is put on my credit card, okay? So not the full $2,000, but $1,200, whereas the full $2,000 here goes onto my line of credit. Now, I made these two equal as far as the interest rates were concerned on the credit card and the personal line of credit. We all know that the personal lines of credit are much less than the credit cards, okay? So they are much less than them, but in this case, I'm showing you apples to apples, right? So 21%, 21%. Now, so my direct deposit then comes in, I have to hold out $800. I've got $1,200 that I'm putting against this credit card, okay? And as you can see here, I've got loan 1, bill 2, and bill 3. Same thing over here. I've got loan 1, bill 2, and bill 3. Okay, so I have 3 things that I have to pay. Well, my loan is a non-chargeable expense. So I cannot put the money for my loan, which is $800. I cannot put that again on my credit card and pay it that way. So again, I have to hold it out of my income to leave it in the checking account. Or I should say the income that I'm going to put on my card, right? Okay, so I pay this bill, right, with my $800, and then I pay bill 2 and I pay bill 3 out of my credit card, okay? So pretty much works that way, right? Makes good sense, I hope. All right, now I've got $2,000 here. I put it into my checking account for about a split second. Then that $2,000 moves as a payment to my personal line of credit. So from my personal line of credit then, I can pay loan 1 because I can pay my loans through my line of credit. They are not considered non-chargeable expenses, okay? And I can pay bill 2 and I can pay bill 3. Now, the question is, why then are the lines of credit, is there not such a thing called chargeables and non-chargeables with the line of credit? Well, because this is, remember, it's like a sweep account, okay? So technically, if you want to look at it technically, you're still paying these bills through the checking account. But what's happening is the money that you put onto this line of credit comes in, drops the balance, and then from the line of credit, right, we're putting the money back into the checking. So it kind of goes like this, right? So it moves from the checking into the line of credit. The line of credit, we then have bills to pay. So we move them back into the checking account. And from the checking account, these bills are then paid. Okay, so they're paid. Now, why on earth would you go through all that money movement? Well, what would be the reason for that, right? Because that seems crazy, right? That seems like ludicrous. So why do you do that? Well, because you're dropping the average daily balance, okay? So that's why you do it. You're saving yourself the interest, okay? And you're dropping those balances. So let's look at it this way. So let's say in this situation, here's our credit card, okay? So here's our CC. Okay, there's our credit card, and this is our PLOC. Okay, so our credit card and our PLOC. So we've got our credit card here, and we know that the $1,200, is what we could put on the card, and we know $2,000 is what we could put against the line of credit. So now we're going to multiply them by our interest rate. Okay, so you're going to see what happens with the interest. So if I take the $1,200, multiply it by my 0.21, right, I'm going to get 252. I then take that and divide it by 12 to give me my monthly charge, okay? Because this 252 is what it would cost me for 1 year, okay? If I left this 1,200 out there for 1 year on that card. But I'm not going to do that, right? It's going to change every month. And so we have to divide it out. And so it's 252 divided by 12, which gives me my $42 in interest. All right. So now let's say I had a balance on each of these of $3,000. So I bring in my income of $1,200, drops me to $1,800. Then I have, let's say my expenses are $1,000 that are coming out of this card. So my expenses are $1,000. Then I have my interest, which was, we calculated the 42, right? So now I'm left with, after all the expenses and the interest comes out, $2,842. Okay. So similarly, let's run that through our line of credit, okay? So the line of credit, 2,000 times the 0.21, okay, gives me 420. Now it's not going to sit there for a full year, right? So we have to divide it by 12 because each month it's going to be different. So I'm dividing it by 12 and I get 35, right? Here's 42, here's 35, because I'm putting less on that line of credit than I am when I use a PLOC, right, instead of the credit card. So I've got 3,000. I drop it by my 2,000. Clearly, it's 1,000. It's less than this. Then I have $1,000 in my expenses and $35 for my interest. So you can see there's definitely a difference between these two. And yes, we're working with lower dollar amounts, right? So the higher dollar amounts, you're going to see it's going to be more impactful to you. But this still makes a difference, you guys. 42 versus 35, right? That adds up. So now we've got, at the end of the month, after all these expenses come out, I'm at 2,035, where I was at 2,842. So you can see why you want to put your entire income into these lines of credit. The more income you put in, the quicker those balances drop, right? So that's exactly what we're doing. So now let's get into the student scenario that I have for you today using these personal lines of credit. And again, small lines of credit, big or small, it doesn't matter. Velocity Banking can handle it all, right? So we've got a student scenario here with their income is $5,100, okay? Now their expenses are $4,860, which means they have a positive cash flow of $240. Now, here goes that question out there. Why wouldn't you just take your $240 and slap it down against these cards? Well, you could. You could, sure. And if that's how you want to run your finances, awesome. Do it all day long. But most people want it done for them and do a better job when it's done for them and it's already taken care of. So that's what Velocity Banking does. It already takes care of some of that stuff for you. So we're talking human nature here, right? And I'm not going to sit here and say that anybody's, unintelligent because they use their money, right? We're all going to use our money. But if somebody has it and it's being taken care of for me and I'm working down my balances without having to think about it and without being tempted with the money sitting in my checking account, I'm all for that. because it just helps me out at the end of the day. All right. So just wanted to address that for you. All right. So anyway, so we have cash flow of 240 bucks. Again, we know that's not a lot because stuff happens, right? We know stuff happens. So these guys have rent. Okay. So they actually are in a condo. They have rent of $1,310. And they have a car payment here of $6,705, so $6,705. I'm sorry, not a car payment. The balance on their card is $6,705, and they are paying $382. Now, they only have 1.6 years left, which is why this is at $273 as a payback amount, right? As to term it out, they're left with $273 because they've already been paying on it. So I wanted to include that in here, and that was about 4.8% interest rate on that. I forgot my percentage, but that's a percent. Now, most of these, I think this was a 6-year loan, but the rest of these are 4, almost 5, just so you know, to term these out, because I didn't write that down. But I want to say that was, maybe it was a 5-year loan. Maybe it was 5 years. I'll have to look that up. Sorry. Anyway, but in any event, right? In any event, we only have $273 left on that. All right. So now I have Citi here, and the Citi card is at $6,205. That's the balance that they have on it, or left on it, I should say. It's for $186. That is their payment that they're paying on this. Okay. $186. And it's at a 24% rate. To term it out, it's going to be $4,122. We have Wells Fargo card, $4,018. The payment on that is $114. That is at a 22% interest rate. And to term that out, we're looking at $2,508. They have a Gap card. There's a $790 balance on that. It costs them $30 a month. And that card, you guys, these store cards, 33.99% is what they're paying. And hilariously enough, they would pay $666 to term that out over, again, almost 5 years, over 5 years. So Discover here is at $2,600 approximately. It's at an $84 is their monthly payment. It's at a 27%. And to term it out, it would be $1,876. They have a mobile card, a gas card. They have $632 on that. $23 a month is their payment. 31.49% is that card. And to term it out, it would be at $501. Again, that's pretty close to 5-year period on that as well. So what we have here is a total in debts of $20,950. Okay, $20,950. They have in payments $2,129, and that does include their rent. And then again, when you add up all of these to term it out, it would be $9,946 to pay all that back. All right. So again, what do we do when we look at these situations, when you guys present us with your cases, right? So that's what's so fun about them, is they're like cases to us. So when we look at this and we say, okay, well, what can we do? We know we have a $5,000 personal line of credit sitting out there. Okay, we have that. We have a Citi card here for $6,200. We have a car loan for $6,705. Now, if it's me, I'm probably going to leave this alone because I only have $273 to pay that back. I've already paid it, right? Sunk cost. I've already paid stuff. It doesn't matter. And I only have about $273 left of interest to pay on it. So I'm probably not going to attack that one. All right. But we definitely have a Citi card, and that's expensive. It's costing a bunch of money here, right? It's going to cost us in interest $4,122. Well, I have Wells Fargo, which is also my next highest balance, right? At $4,018. And I knew I was forgetting these. Okay, $4,018. And then to term that out, it's $2,508. Okay. So what can I do? What can I do? Well, we have a $5,000 personal line of credit, and that is at 12.5% interest rate. So sometimes, now most of the time I talk about, we always want to go for the biggest payment first, right? We want to go for the biggest payment to give us back the most cash flow. Well, that doesn't always work out depending on what tools you have, right? So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Gap, my Discover, and my Mobile, and I am going to put that on my line of credit, my personal line of credit, which means I'm going to be taking $4,022 and putting that onto the line of credit, okay? So that's what I have depicted here for you, so you can see the total. Then I'm going to look and say, okay, well, that gives me, let's see, how much back, what does that give us? Okay, so that's going to give us back, let's see, 30 plus 84 plus 23. Okay, so that's giving me back $137, all right? Well, I could also at the same time run this city card now, couldn't I? Because that's going to give me back another $186. So that's going to help my overall picture, right? So now instead of 137, I'm going to add 186 to that. So now I'm getting back $323, okay, as cash flow. So that is how we look at what we're going to do and what we're going to present you, right? And that's what you're going to do for yourself. You're going to look and say, okay, well, what do I have? What do I have to work with? And what then can I do to give myself the most cash flow back to help work these debts down? All right. So what we end up doing is taking, we know we're going to take these three, and then we're going to take the city card next. Okay. So we're going to then, we have the 422 plus the 6205 because that's what we're starting with. Now, our income, we know that our income is $5,100. That is what we have to work with. Okay. And so the majority of that income then, I know I can split up and put on, I'm going to put $3,000 onto my line of credit, and I'm going to put $2,100 in expenses that are chargeable onto that city card, okay? It has to be chargeable expenses, right? Because obviously the non-chargeables won't work. So we know the non-chargeables have to go through my line of credit. Chargeables go through my credit card. Okay, so what we did then is we split it out, okay? And so I took the income, divided it up, but I also had to do the same thing with our expenses, okay? So our expenses, if we add that up, we've got 4537. Well, how did I get that? Okay, so I know I'm getting back these, right? I'm getting these back, well, not the Wells Fargo, sorry. I'm getting the Citi, the Gap, the Discover, and the Mobile. Those expenses come off the top, right? Because we don't owe them anymore once we take care of these, right? Those, once these are taken care of in our card, they're now here, okay? And so the city card, this is going to come back to me as cash flow as well. So we take those out of our expenses. So if we do that, we're going to take the 4860, we're going to subtract off our 186, we're going to subtract off our 30, we're going to subtract off our 84, and we're going to subtract off our 23, which gives us the 4537, okay? Knowing I have the 5,100 in income, you have to then look at your income and decide, okay, where am I going to put my income? How am I going to split my income out? Because you know you have to have income and expenses. Your expenses cannot be greater, obviously, than your income because you'd be going in the wrong direction. That's not going to work. Similarly, same thing here. Your expenses that you put here can't overcome the income nor the interest, right? Nor the interest, okay? So if we run this down, here's what happens. We have 1022, right? And we're going to add in our expenses of $26.37, and we're going to add in our interest of $26, all right? So this line of credit is going to run for 4 months, and I'm going to spend $82 in interest to do it, okay? So that's running for 4 months. Now, this card here, if I were to let that run completely and term it out through this method, right? Leaving it at the 1900 income and the 2100 income and the 1900 in expenses, it would take 31 months or so. But I don't need to do that, do I? Because this one is done in 4 months, all right? So if that's done in 4 months, then this card here, all right, that I'm running, at 4 months, we know we can move over some of these expenses or do something with them, right? Or do we just bring in our city now, right? Do we bring in our city card and then run the city card inside of our line of credit? Well, we know that this was taken care of pretty quickly, right? So I imagine that the Wells Fargo at 418 is going to be taken care of pretty quickly too, right? So that is what we're going to do. So we know that we have in 4 months, this is $82, okay? So that's what we've spent in interest, all right? And so my balance on the city card, on the city card is going to be at $58.05 in 4 months. So starting the 5th month, I'm going to take that balance and I'm going to do something with it. And that is where I'm going to erase the board and I'm going to show you what our next steps are, okay? So if you give me a minute, I'm going to do that, but we're going to take the 5805 after 4 months. We are going to move it over here and show you what happens. And we know that we are now done with the GAP, the Discover, the Mobile, and we then are going to attack the Wells Fargo, and I will be right back to show you what then happens. So I've got some numbers finished out for you. So let's recap for just a real quick second. Now, I said that 5586 was the balance after 4 months. That's not actually true. The balance after 4 months is 5805. So that was just part of the work done. So I apologize if I misled you there. Okay, so after 4 months, we know we've taken care of GAP, Discover, and Mobile. Okay, so that was taken care of in 4 months for $82, $82 in interest. Okay, now we've got our Citi card, right? That's still running at this point, but at the 4 month mark, all right, we have to take our balance of 5805, all right, the 5805, and we are subtracting out the 2100. So we're still working with the same incomes here, right? Still working with the same income. But here's what happens, right? So now we know that we've taken care of these three, right? The GAP, Discover, and Mobile, and now we're going to take care of Wells, okay? So Wells Fargo has to come into play here. So we've got the Wells card. These were paid off. So now we're going to buy out, right? We're going to buy out the Wells card with our line of credit, okay? And so this now is on our line of credit at the $4,018, okay? Now, Wells Fargo would actually be a little bit less than that, wouldn't it? Because after 4 months, we're going to have paid on it and the balance is going to go down. But I just left it at the 4,018. So we're still going to use the same income here. The 3,000 is going to go in because we know that it worked pretty great, right, over here for this card at a similar amount. So we're going to use the 3,000. We're going to leave it. So we run this down, and it takes 3 more months, okay? So 3 more months it takes. So now what we have is a total of 7 months to take care of your GAP, your Discover, your Mobile, and your Wells. That's taken 7 months. Now, this Citi card, all right, so at the 4 month mark, the Citi card has to continue to run. But we've changed something, haven't we? Okay. When we took the Wells Fargo card, all right, and we started bringing that into our mix here with Velocity Banking, we then got our $114 back, okay? And that $114, I actually used that cash flow to run this Citi card, okay? So I used the cash flow and I put it over here, all right? So I dropped my expenses. I was able to reallocate the expenses for this student. So we're down to $1,786, okay, in expenses versus, what was it before 17? Oh, the 1,900. So we subtracted off the 114, gave us the 1,786. And then we ran our finances again, right? We ran it through Velocity Banking. So this took 15 months and it was $918 in interest, all right? So what do we have going on here? We still have one thing left out there though, don't we? We have one thing left, and that is this car. Now, remember I said I wasn't going to take care of it probably because we don't have much as far as a balance left on it for interest or the interest that we would owe. And remember, it had about 1.6 years left. So that being said, when it was all said and done, plus adding in that interest for the car, okay, we spent 18 months. It took us 18 months to do this because this is being run at the same time these are going, right? So you're not adding 15 and 7. It is 18 months that it took. And we spent $1,300, so $1,340 in interest versus the $9,946 that we would have spent if we continued to Velocity Bank. This is why we do what we do. This is why we bring this to you, because we know it's going to change lives. It changed our life. I know it'll change yours. You guys have an awesome day. I hope you learned something today. Like and subscribe. We always want to get as many people learning about Velocity Banking as possible. I don't know why more people don't do this. And I get it for all you naysayers out there that, that don't think it works. That's okay. You do you. We're going to do us. Have a great day, guys. See you in the next video.